stuff up here on the pulpit. I'm in the dark. There we go. Thank you, Matt. If we can't laugh about it, then why are we here, right? Not that I'm laughing at you. Nobody's laughing at anybody. I appreciate you. I appreciate everybody. So, good morning. We're rocking and rolling. This is going to be an interesting Sunday, or at least Sunday service. If you are new to us this morning, this is a different kind of service, and you'll see why at the end. But I don't know. Should be good. Should be good. This is Faith Promise Sunday. I think it's what it says on the screen. Faith Promise Sunday. And some of y'all are like, what in the world is that? Some of you know exactly what it is. But before we get to that, I want to share some exciting news. Did anybody see the little twin babies that were here last week? Yeah, some of you were. Well, they belong to a young couple, Pastor Dylan and Pastor Ashley. And they were here to meet you without you knowing it. Because they have been offered and accepted the associate pastor position and will be starting at the end of the month as associate pastor. So yeah, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Now, as a part of this, we as a church board and as a stewardship team are stepping out a little bit of faith because we're trusting that God will provide. As far as giving and everything goes. And so we already have a couple of people that have stepped forward to say we'll help support in any way, specifically by providing an extra amount above regular tithes and offerings to make sure that we could have this position filled. If you would like to help out with that by helping with salary and expenses and everything else, please let me know. It's going to be ongoing, but we're trusting that God is going to work through the ministry of Pastor Dylan and Pastor Ashley. He's actually bringing some experience as a youth pastor and production and some sound, and Terry is excited about that, and she is actually leading. She's a worship pastor and leading worship at the church they're at right now. So we're praying about how she will incorporate into our praise team. But it should be good. They're young and just got those little babies and make you feel young when you're around them, or make you feel old. I don't know, but it should be good. Also, last week I mentioned. Well, I kind of extended a challenge we're going to work on creating a Geneva mission team. I think if I understand the commitments that have been made, at least 5, maybe 7 that have responded to that. If you've been praying about that and committing to making Geneva your mission field and being part of that team for the next year, please see me. If it's something that you feel like God wants you to do, I can tell you from personal experience, you don't want a Jonah moment. You don't want to look back and say, God was calling me to do that, calling me to serve, and I didn't. Because you don't know the eternal impact that your resistance could have. And I'm not trying to guilt you into it. I'm trying to encourage you, that nudging I talked about last week. So please let me know if you feel called to that. It should be a great thing. And same thing for those joining in at Geneva and online. Before we get to the Faith Promise video, I've asked, is Marie back in here yet? There she is. I've asked Marie to come up here because Marie is our NMI president. And if you don't know what that is, it's Nazarene Mission International. So here at the church, we just call her the mission board representative. What'd you say? The mission lady? She is the missions lady. I need to get you a microphone. Oh, there's one. I don't know whose this is. Oh, this is 2. See, is that working?
Are you working?
You got to stand over here with me. Yes, you do. Right in the middle. So because we just had the Nazarene Mission International Convention, and today is Faith Promise Sunday, I asked Marie to come up here first thing, and I said simply just share one thing that you brought home from the mission convention. One thing that you thought was the most impactful from the convention overall, and I gave her an entire 7 minutes to think about it. So she should be great and no pressure.
Okay, so there was a lot of great mission talks. The Radcliffes from Papua New Guinea, who run the Nazarene Hospital, to a girl Charity that is in Thailand, and she's going to Papua New Guinea. But the thing that made the most impact on both my husband and I, and we talked about it on the way home, is the main speaker, Pastor Chabot. She was from Africa, and she told the story about her grandmother was not a Christian. She was kind of like a party animal in Africa, I guess. She liked to dance and go out and stuff. But she had a 1-year-old, and she came home one day, and the baby was sick. And she called the doctor, and the doctor said that there's nothing he could do. The baby was going to die that day. And she was devastated. And she ran down the street where there was a revival going on, a Nazarene revival with I think his name was Streetlighter, but I'm not 100% sure. And she interrupted the service. She comes running in and she says, "You need to come and pray for my baby. The doctor said the only God could save him." And they're like, "Well, we'll come after the service is over." She goes, "No, you don't understand. He might only have an hour to live. You have to come now." And they dropped what they were doing. They took the elders, and they went down, and they said one thing to her before they prayed over the baby is, "Will you accept Jesus as your Savior? Will you become a follower of Christ?" And she said, "Absolutely. What mother wouldn't if their baby is dying and this is her only hope, right?" So they prayed over him, and he lived. So after that, Grandma went on and told everybody that she could find for the rest of her life, she lived to be 90 years old, about what Jesus did for her and her family. And she had many, many people come. The biggest thing is Dr. Chambeau was the granddaughter. Dr. Chambeau, or Reverend Chambeau, became a pastor. And she is actually living in the United States. She's at the Kansas City main district. And she had just moved there. Her grandmother was still in Africa. And they bought the stuff they needed to set up housing in Kansas City, Kansas, and were broke. Her husband went to a convention in California, Nazarene Convention, to be a speaker there. So she gets word that her grandma has passed, and she can't go back because she has no money. She used all the money they had to set up house in Kansas. And she called her husband, and her husband was on the platform, and they introduced a Reverend Streetlighter, and he went down and talked to him, and he says, "Are you a relation to this man?" And he said, "Yes, that's either his father or grandfather." It kind of is mixed up in my head. I can't. But he said, "Yes." So he told him the story. He got up and told the convention in California about this story. And they said, she said, is she going back to visit? And he says, "We can't afford it." They took up a collection and had enough money to send her back to Africa to be at her grandmother's funeral. And what it says to me is God has a plan. And he sometimes disrupts what our plan is for the glory of him. And he can get much more than our plan can actually happen. And he goes full circle. Like, we're thinking, that's not coincidence that her husband happened to be in California at the same time that the pastor that saved her grandmother, was, how does that happen? But God. But God. And I said, to us, that means when we have distractions, when we have interruptions in our life, let it be a God wink, a God moment, and let us follow those. Is that okay?
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. So that's just a little bit of a taste of the kind of things that you hear about at the different conventions and serving and the different delegates that represented our church for the district. And then yesterday we had the district assembly where we got to vote on some different things and hear reports. And Oh, it was a good morning. And then watch some people receive local ministers' or district ministers' licenses, and a couple get ordained. It was a good time. But as we continue with Faith Promise, I want you to, if you don't know what it is, I want you to go ahead and watch this video. Go ahead, Matt.
Everywhere we look in Nazarene missions, we are seeing a movement of the Holy Spirit to bring salvation and restoration through the people of God. We believe that through faith, God will continue to do amazing things. See, faith shows the reality of what we hope for. It is the evidence of things we cannot see. Faith is a choice, and His promise is clear. For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whoever believes in Him should not perish, but have everlasting life. So how do we step out in faith? How do we connect with God's promise? How do we join His movement? Every Church of the Nazarene is encouraged to share a percentage of their income to Nazarene missions. These funds are essential to spread the gospel and to support our missionaries. Many churches step out in faith beyond this encouraged percentage through Faith Promise. This one weekend each year emphasizes the missional work of the local congregation and the global church. They are challenged to give generously to share Christ's transformational love with the world. But this isn't a calculated pledge. It's a promise made by faith that God will provide. A promise that He will do immeasurably more than we could ever imagine. Faith Promise is about stepping out in faith. It's about the giving of our resources so that the good news can be shared. God will answer our prayers of hope and fulfill His promise. God is moving through His people around the world and through Faith Promise. Nazarene Missions invites you to join the movement.
All right, as we get into the main attraction of this, well, you got all kinds of notes. The main point of today is to give Jamie a chance to speak. Are you working? Are you on?
I don't know.
Talk.
Hello.
You sure you're on?
You said to flip the switch, and I did. I asked him.
This is a little taste of what goes on in our house. What about now?
I don't know. Yeah.
All right. All right, Terry's got it. So, Faith Promise. Before we get to the specifics of what Faith Promise is, if you don't know, or of the challenge for today in supporting missions around the world, I thought it would be nice if we shared our experience as short-term missionaries. And so there's going to be some pictures rotating behind that you've already had a glimpse of. But Jamie is going to share our first mission trip, details of that from where we went to Kenya. I don't know how much you're going to say, but it was in support of the Jesus Film Project. And I won't say anything else, so take it away.
So Sean said that I had 7 to 10 minutes to talk. I don't think that's very fair, because he said, what would you tell somebody if they asked you about going on a mission trip? I was like, well, it'll take me longer than 7 to 10 minutes, because I'd probably take me 3 hours just to talk about the preparation before we left. And I'm a good storyteller too. So he said, pretend that the person said they only had 7 to 10 minutes. What would you say? So I'll try. So we did go to Kenya. This was in 2005 that we were prepping for it. So this was like a big deal for me. If anybody knows me, I've been here for a couple of years, and most of you probably know I don't like to do every day. So Sean was deployed, and I had the kids at home. This was his first deployment, so it was a big deal. And I went to this meeting that they were having about the Jesus film, basically because all my friends were going to the meeting, and so that's the only reason why I went. And so I told Sean about it, and I don't know, he can say what he thought about it. when I told him about it. But in my mind, I went to the meeting. I told him that I felt like maybe that I was supposed to go, but he had to go with me. And so then I kind of said, well, if the money doesn't come, then it won't be us. That'll be like my sign that we're not supposed to go. And so fast forward, we did a bunch of work. The Jesus film, in case you don't know, is you take a bunch of, so you raise money. So all of our work was done before we went, and we just went and did the witness part of a work and witness trip. So we raised money and raised funds, and we were able to purchase 2 sets of equipment to take over. And so it's a projector, a collapsible screen, and it's all meant so they can carry it, like 1 or 2 people could carry all the items and be able to go into the remote locations in Africa. So the idea is they can show the Jesus film, which is the story of Jesus, in their language, and take that out and set it up like, we would set up outside and have like a drive-in kind of a thing, projector to watch it. And so we raised enough money. It was $1,200, I think, for 1 set of equipment. We raised enough money to bring 2 sets of equipment, and we were going to leave it there. That was the plan. So fast forward again, and Sean's already talked about, like, there were so many things that happened. Again, I could talk forever about it, but he told a story once about him getting his passport. Like, we're literally on the phone on a Tuesday. We're supposed to leave on Thursday, and the lady says, the passport's still sitting here at the office, and we get home, and the passport's hanging on our door. So, let me tell you about my God. So that was, like, pretty cool. And so he was able to go with us. He literally got back from Iraq in November, and we left in January. So he went back again on a long trip. So God did a lot of things. So I knew that it was time this was my confirmation that I was supposed to go. And it was, like I said, a big decision for me to go because I have so bad anxiety about doing stuff like that. So we get on the plane, we drove down to Atlanta, and we left from Atlanta, so we get on the plane, and I just said, okay, I'm having a panic attack. I'm like, if you called me to do this, God, then you're going to go with me, and you're going to be with me, and I'm just going to make the most of it. And I am determined from this moment on, we hadn't left the ground yet in Atlanta, that I am going here, and you're going to use me in some form or fashion, and I'm not going to be anxious, and I'm not going to be scared, and I'm claiming this, and it's going to be awesome. And I was. I ate an ox tongue. I ate gross food when I was there. I did a lot of crazy stuff. So, but it was so good. So I know pictures are scrolling. Oh gosh, that was a bad picture. So this is like us out. So what we did was we went around. Aren't these little kids so sweet? So we went around and went to a village. It was called Nakuru Blankets. They have like this huge lake. I think there might be a picture of it. I don't know, but it has flamingos. It was so cool. And so, did it just show it? And so we also went on a safari at the end of it. That was like our fun part of the trip because they do believe that if you go over and do something in another country, it's great to experience the culture as well. And so you do the work part and stuff on the front end, and that's something to kind of say thank you for coming over and helping. With everything. So the country is like obviously third world. It was very, you can tell by like the concrete houses, like that's what they lived in. We went in and it's like literally concrete floors, like this space is their whole entire house, and they were so sweet. And so Sean didn't walk around with me. We had to go around this village and invite people to come to this showing of the Jesus film. I was like, we have to go talk to people. And Swahili is their language, and so we'd say jambo, that means hello, and they would ask us, when's your birthday? And I thought that was super weird, like, why do they want to know when my birthday is? And so I would tell them, and they're like, no, your birthday. And so the missionary explained to us that they were asking for when we accepted Christ, and that's what they looked at it as. That's when their birthday was when they became Christians. And so they were so exciting. The kids we played outside with them. They taught us to dance. We just had like a great time with them, and I loved the people. So we were able to worship with them some days. So we were there for 3 days. We would come back each day, and they were wearing the same clothes. Like one little boy had on a winter coat, that was his shirt that he wore every single day. And so it was very just like humbling, but at the same time, they didn't want you to feel sorry for them. When I left there, I felt sorry for us here in the United States because we have so much access to everything, and yet we don't take advantage of it. And so they're like have nothing. Like one of the moms told us a story, one of the missionaries interpreted, and she said that there was a time when they didn't have any food, and so she would actually make dirt pies, like out of dirt, and they would eat that so that they would not be starving so badly, so they'd have something in their stomach. So could you imagine that? But these kids were just like so enamored with us, like they loved us being there, and we just had the best time. So we walked around and invited people to it, and Sean was in a different group than me, so I didn't even have my, support buddy, like my security blanket. So I like talked to all these people, and I invited them to come, and we had this great turnout on the third night of a worship service, and we showed the Jesus film, and then we were able to leave that equipment there. So I know Sean was like, he wants to do this. Obviously, it's Faith Promise, and we've been talking about crazy generous. So something that God really placed upon my heart at that time, and I didn't realize it, was I rededicated my life. I became a Christian at a young age, and I rededicated my life, and Sean became a Christian, and we're in church, and I'm like, I am crazy generous with when he finally agreed to tithe. Crazy generous with our tithe. Like with Faith Promise, I've always given to Faith Promise. I've always tithed and given above. Like I was like, man, as he was preaching that, I was like, we've always been that way. And then with my time, I love being in church. This was my favorite place, always is my favorite place to be. I was there all the time. And then with my talent, I was like, I don't really think I have a talent. But maybe like working with kids and stuff. When we lived in Tennessee, I did a lot of vacation Bible school and upward soccer, and I still do that here. I have a tendency to take a step back and say I'm not welcome or not wanted to do that, and I don't want to step on anybody's toes. So maybe that's part of my talent. I don't know. But I was like, so this going on this mission trip was a way to wrap all this together, to be like, now you're going to take all of these three things and you're going to go where I've called you to go. And then we did that even more because we came to Ohio, and left our comfort zone there. So the other thing that I think is important when you're talking about Faith Promise, and the Church of the Nazarene is fantastic because today we're going to pledge money to give to missions, and it actually goes to the missionaries. So Lowell, I remembered his name. I can't remember his wife's name though. I really was up till like 3 trying to remember his name. His name is Lowell. And so we were there, and it was like when we first landed, we had all this equipment, and they were trying to charge us extra money for bringing it into the country. But because Lowell had been there and he had this rapport with the people, he was able to, we only had to pay on one set of equipment instead of 2. We were on a bus, and like they got on the bus with machine guns and stuff, and I was like, oh my gosh, we're gonna die, And he was able to talk to them. Like everywhere we went, the village we went to, he told us, you can say these things, do these things, don't do these things. Like this is disrespectful to them, this is respectful. And so I just think like if we as a church, as the Nazarene denomination, didn't support them to be there financially, then we wouldn't have had that. We would have gone there and been like, good luck, And so that would have been a lot harder. And we left the Jesus Film equipment because they, again, have a better rapport, so they can take that into the villages. So I just think like, I love Faith Promise. I love being able to support missionaries in other countries. And I mean, I know we have missionaries here in the States too. It's a big deal to go to another country and get out of your comfort zone. So I know we're going to Belize this year, and I know some people might be like, well, that seems like a vacation spot. It is a third world country, and we do have Nazarene churches there. And, I would just encourage you to pray about how God could use you in that manner. And maybe it's financially, maybe it's actually going, maybe it's just praying for the people who decide to go. But God called us all to be missionaries here and abroad. And so we have to remember that. And sometimes it takes us out of our comfort zone, but he will go with us, and he'll equip us to do that. And I just know it was the absolute greatest thing. When I came back, I no longer cared about like what I wore and all of those things, because they had nothing, and they were so praising God so much more than I ever was. And so that really opened my eyes and like really changed my life as far as my walk with Christ. So sorry that was longer than 10 minutes, but.
No, I think you crammed 20 minutes into 10 minutes. She talks fast, doesn't she? Yeah. I love it. It's like life in fast forward. It's awesome. There's a couple things she didn't mention. Like there's one picture with the Pastor Wafula standing on the stage. Yeah, I got up on that stage and everyone said, "Get back down," because it was. Yeah, they thought it was gonna collapse. And we got to visit African Nazarene University when we first got there, and see the good work they're doing. And if you've seen pictures of the Maasai people wearing the very bright orange blankets, orange and yellow, kind of striped and gold, that's Nakuru is where they made those blankets. And we found out that it was 2 or 3 years later when all of the problems with genocide were going on in Kenya. Nakuru is one place where the people had gone through, and many, many people were killed. But so it's very, very close to our hearts. Yeah, I got in trouble by the missionary host that was there, because we kind of got caught up with one family and talking and praying with them, and so we missed a time we were supposed to be somewhere, and I kind of got a stern talking to by the missionary. It's hard to believe in those pictures that was, 18 years ago. Jamie looks like she's about 2 days older. So, yeah, it's awesome. So that was Kenya in 2006. 2 years later, God called me, and not Jamie this time, to go to Ethiopia in 2008. We were specifically called because it was a work and witness trip. And I don't have near as many pictures, and this isn't even an actual picture, but it's the closest thing I could find to the type of building we were trying to help build in a schoolhouse. It was an orphanage and schoolhouse all in one location. So we flew into Addis Ababa, which is a very, very, very large city. It's the capital of Ethiopia. And we all went with these expectations that we were going to be out in the desert and seeing, babies with swollen stomachs and starving kids and everything else, and it was going to be hot. And and the crazy thing is, we got in trucks and we drove to what was considered a hotel, and it was, if you've ever stayed in a third world country, what a nicer hotel would be like is kind of not even close to bottom of the barrel here. But it was a bed, and actually had a shower, and when I walk out of my room, I look across the street. There was another hotel right next to it, and they actually had a swimming pool. And it was green. And there was all kinds of people swimming in it, because they don't have chlorine and all that stuff, but they still. So, I mean, it was some interesting stuff. But they dropped us off in this town, and it was still about 30 minutes to the village where we'd be working. And the first day, the missionary host at that point drove us out there, and I'm sitting up front, and just talking back and forth. And this is a local missionary. He's from the area, but he's serving full time in a different area. But he was Ethiopian. And he said, "Oh, so you've driven in countries like mine before?" And I said, "Well, Iraq and Kuwait." And he says, "Okay, well, you'll be driving after today." Okay, and these are very large, Land Rovers, and the entire team's in the back, and he was driving very fast, and I was loving it. Everybody else didn't love it so much. So I ended up being our driver, had to remember how to get to this remote village. There's no street signs, and even if there were, I couldn't read them anyway. And we ended up getting there, and the further out we drove and the closer we got, the more farms and hills and trees and everything. And I'm like, this is Ethiopia? And honestly, it reminded me of kind of the rolling hills of Tennessee or Ohio. Not flat like we have farmland here, but just rolling hills. And it was very strange. But we went each day, and we helped lay brick on a building like this. They build the walls, and they pack them with mud and put the roof on, and then we actually laid brick to help it to last. And then we helped with the floor. And what they would do is bring in these very, very large rocks on with a tractor and a rickety old trailer, push them off, and then you would have to bust the rocks into smaller rocks, and then they would stack them up and make the floor out of it, and spread concrete on it, and that was how they had a concrete floor, and that was their schoolhouse, because they had many of them that were completed. And there's some things that we very quickly realized about how different our world is, or our existence is, from theirs. Keep in mind, this is at an orphanage, and kids of all ages there. And we walk in, and they give us one room to kind of put our bags and where our food is and everything else. And we had to leave somebody with all of that stuff, because the kids would climb in through the windows to steal whatever you had, because they had nothing. Even to the point that we would drink a bottle of water, and we had to make sure that we put those empty bottles back in our bags, because the kids would beat each other senseless to try to get an empty water bottle. The reason they would do that is because they lived like a 2-hour hike from clean water. And so if they had a water bottle, they could walk 2 hours, fill up their water bottle, and have water to take back with them. And they would we're talking closed fist, kicking, punching, biting over an empty water bottle. And it was very, very impactful for the entire team. And there was more people with guns, guards, looking over farms and everything. And that was kind of the funniest thing. I kind of walk up, and again, I'm 2 years removed from combat in Iraq, and I see, somebody with an AK-47, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's a normal thing over here. And everybody else is just, he's got a gun. And we don't. But the good thing about that, and this is the final story about Ethiopia, it was, two final things. Number one, we were told when we got there by the missionary not to publicly tell everybody we were a church group working on this orphanage. He said, because the community you're going into is Muslim. You will be working side by side with Muslims. And he said, we've never had anything happen, but that doesn't mean that somebody new hasn't come into the community, somebody who wouldn't appreciate it. And the very interesting thing is, after the first couple of days and we started forming relationships with these people, they figured it out on their own. And they said, you're here as Christians working. And our pastor at the time was asked directly by a Muslim imam. He said, what do you do at home? And he says, well, I work for a church, and I'm a pastor. And we were well received. But it wasn't dangerous. But when you're told, keep it on the down low, or it could get dangerous, it makes it real. I mean, it was real. And then our side trip at the end was to stop in Egypt and go to the pyramids in Cairo and see the Sphinx. And we actually I had the opportunity to ride a boat across the Red Sea into Jordan and go to Petra, and just cool stuff. But the worst thing was, I told everybody that I could eat anything, and had a salad in Ethiopia that they wash with water. And let's just say my time in Cairo was unpleasant. But that's all right, made it. I actually skipped going to the Cairo Museum. If you've ever heard, the Cairo Museum is supposed to be one of the top in the world, and I just couldn't do it. So that was good. So that was my experience in giving my time and my talents and money, especially my talents or skills in actually doing some construction. But for the third and final story, I want you to first watch this video.
Bye.
it's a different world. It's a better world in some ways. It's a harder world in some ways, but it's a great world because God still works here like He does everywhere else.
We are on another continent. I am 15 hours of a plane ride. I'm 5,000 plus miles away from my comfort zone. So me getting out of my comfort zone is getting outside that four walls, and that's us being the church to people that need to hear His word because these people don't know.
These kids have basically nothing, and yet they're happy.
Seeing the kids' faces light up when you tell them about Jesus, when you tell them about the hope, when you tell them about the love He has for them, when you tell them that they're important, that they just light up and they're so excited about it. And that's probably the biggest thing that blessed my heart.
Now when I think of Africa, I think of individuals. And that to me makes all the difference because I can now pray for them as people that as my acquaintance instead of a group of people that I've never met.
Part of our identity and part of our heritage is that there's nothing more important than people coming to know Jesus Christ. And that can happen in America, and it needs to happen here, just like it does in Circleville or Waverly or Chillicothe. Sweating and getting all dirty with laying tile and putting some doors in and ceilings and just wearing ourselves out during the day. Wearing ourselves out even more playing with kids. And then each night we get a little wild with our worship because that's their culture. We get open and free. And we've been participating with them. They've been teaching us just as much as we've been trying to help them.
But there's just something about being in another country and experiencing the way that they worship and the way that they see God, sometimes because of what they deal with and how it is different.
But we thank God for Him that we have this relationship.
Nobody really knows until they're here and they're experiencing that. It's something that you can't speak about. And they taught me more than what I feel like we've taught them.
We read the opening passage about being one church.
Holding the kids and just listening to them sing has been amazing. But last night when we had 7 people go up and accept Christ for the first time, that was beautiful. And I'm just so glad I got to be a part of that story.
And I mean, words cannot describe that. But to release everything and to come where you have no control whatsoever and just experience what God wants to do, it's amazing.
It is amazing, and people, they are just, they don't understand what is happening here in Boca.
All right, so if you don't know where Botswana is, anybody not know where Botswana is? It is directly north of South Africa. So we flew into Johannesburg and then had several hours, I think it was about 6 or 7 hours driving and about 2 hours trying to cross the border into the country of Botswana. And this was in 2017, right? And I actually led this trip, first time leading an international trip, but it was very, very humbling. It was a great opportunity because our church that we were part of in Circleville was partnering with a church plant in the town of Boka, Botswana. And if you didn't know, certain countries, they drive on the wrong side of the road, and Botswana is one of those. And guess who was made the driver as soon as we got there? And so I had the privilege of driving a bus with the entire team on the wrong side of the road and quickly finding out, it's not right turn on red, it's left turn on red, and all kinds of different things. It was just a great experience. But one of the things that people love to talk about when we got back is how I made it a point. We found a small little coffee shop. It was about a 45-minute drive from where we were staying to the village of Boka, and I actually found a coffee shop that we could stop at on the way. And people, I'm not a big coffee drinker, but everybody said it was such good coffee, and it was like $1.50 or something for a large, coffee, like Starbucks style coffee. And everybody was like, how much is it? And I'm like, well, currency exchange, it's about $1.50. So, different things going on like that. But the whole purpose that we were there, as you saw in the video, was to work another phase of putting flooring in and some other projects on a house that was actually designed to house mission teams to come into that community. So as a team would come in, they would have a place to live. They wouldn't have to stay in another community that had a hotel or had a place to house them. And so in that community, at the pastor you saw, they had a missionary that was staying in that community and working in and amongst the community. And so we came in and we had project funds. We bought all the tools that we needed and left them there. We worked on training some of the local people to do the tile, to work on that, because they otherwise would have to hire it out. But I worked on teaching them how to do that. And so we would start about 8:30, 9. We'd get up about 7 and leave by about 8. And so between 8:30 and 9, we're getting dirty. And then about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we would have to stop, because about 4:30, after eating everything, the crusades is what they called them, would start. And so they had a very, very large tent that you saw at the end with the blue and white stripes. That was their church. That was their church building. And so they would put the tent up every single day, and they would set up a whole sound system, and they would put all the chairs out, and they were just every single chair you could imagine. And then we would go out and invite everybody from this village, this community of Boka, to come to the nightly services. And then we would have kids' activities going on across the road, and the adult activities. And I'm going to tell you what, if you haven't experienced a worship service where people truly don't care what you think, they looked at us like, why are y'all standing still? We're praising the God of the universe. Why are you just standing there? Because we're just kind of, and they're just getting it. And it's dusty. And so after the first song, the entire tent is just a cloud of dirt. And we're all just like, and so they went and actually got water to sprinkle on the dirt for us, which was a waste of water. But that's just the heart, The children, you saw a lot of pictures, and the community, everybody, just wanted to know who the white people were, because we're not in a tourist location in Boka, Botswana. There aren't a lot of white people that visit this town of Boka. And but it was a wonderful time, and we did do a side trip back in South Africa and went on safari again, which was amazing, of course. But I ended up with strep throat for the first time in my life, I think because of the dirt in the air. But the highlight for me was when we were about finished at I think it was the last night. We were going to be eating with all the people in the church and the leaders and the pastor and the missionary, and so I went to the pastor and I said, we need to make this special. We need to cook out. We need to grill, have a barbecue. He says, okay, what are you thinking? I said, can you get a goat? He said, yeah, no problem. I said, get a goat, get a few chickens. And so a truck pulls up with a goat tied up in the back. Meh. It had a cage with about 3 or 4 chickens. Now, having been in Iraq and been to barbecues in Iraq, I knew what was happening. And so the whole mission team was like, "What's the goat for?" I'll spare you the details, but we ate good and left a lot of meat for the people of the town. But the funny thing is, and there's no kids in here, right? Y'all don't count. Y'all aren't kids. You're teenagers. So the funny thing is, one of the ladies on the mission team, when we were preparing the food, she said, "Does a chicken really run around with its head cut off?" And this one of the local guys just grabbed this chicken by the head and stretched it over a rock and pulled out a pocket knife. I mean, and as soon as he let go of it, that thing started doing backflips. Oh, those are mission trip memories right there. Yeah. So why do I tell you all of these stories? Why do I share these illustrations? Mainly because they're international short-term mission trips. They're when Jamie and I were for a short time international missionaries. And if you've ever been out of the country serving on a mission trip or in some form or fashion, or even in the country, you have served as a missionary. You know, even if you didn't call yourself a missionary, I just went on a short-term mission trip. You gave of your finances. Yeah, I'm sure you fundraised some of it, but I guarantee you had to spend money in those fundraisers, or you had to spend money to make deposits and pay for your way to be a part of that mission team, which is very common for full-time missionaries, making those kinds of sacrifices. They raise funds and they do those kinds of things, but we gave, just like Jamie said. If we were supposed to go, God would provide, and He did. And let me tell you, in 2006, we didn't have a lot of money, but God provided. We gave of our time for the fundraisers, visiting other churches, writing letters, showing up for events. Not to mention the time it takes to get shots and to get a passport, and the time it takes to getting to know the team and going to meetings and preparing, and then the time for the trip itself. We gave of our talents in some form or fashion, even if it was just, our ability to talk to somebody, tell our story, share the good news. We gave in those ways. And I'll tell you, the first time that I woke up, the first morning in Kenya, I think it was, the first morning in Kenya, I was so overwhelmed that in that very moment, that day, I wasn't earning money. I wasn't working for somebody else. I wasn't doing anything because I had to survive. I wasn't fixing anything on the cars or the house. 100% in that moment was serving God. Every single money, time, talents, everything, every part of me belonged to Him. And I wasn't a pastor yet, and it was amazing. It was amazing. I mean, just complete and total surrender. God, I belong to You. And I'm very thankful for that. Next year, we're planning to take a team to Belize to support a school sponsored by a Nazarene church down there to do work and witness, and we're still trying to put together details on that. But I ask that you would pray for that team as it continues to develop and details come together, but pray that we could be effective witnesses for Christ and give crazy generously to the cause of His kingdom. So why am I telling you all this? Because today is Faith Promise Sunday. And if you don't know what that is, I'm going to have to go quick because Jamie talked too long. No, I'm just kidding. I knew it was going to be busy, but we're going to get to the point very quick. Faith Promise Sunday. If you ask what a missionary is, you're going to hear all kinds of different things, different answers. But in general, a missionary is someone who goes on the mission of God. Sometimes cross-cultural, sometimes across the street. But anyone who shares their faith as a part of redeeming the world, which is God's mission, then you are a missionary. That possibly the best definition is just someone who shares the word of God at all. But when you hear talk about missions in the church, when you hear talk about Nazarene Missions International, right? That's specifically talking about people that go to another culture, to another country, that go around the world. They pack up everything they know and familiar with and comfortable with, and they go somewhere else and serve God in that way. And the word missionary actually comes from a Greek word that means sending, right? And what Jesus said is proclaim the gospel to every creature. Jesus said, sent out his disciples and they went forth and preached everywhere. He gave us the great commission to go to all the nations and make disciples, teaching them to obey everything I've commanded. And he said he would be with us. And so with that said, for today, Faith Promise is about those missionaries who are called outside of their local church, our local church, other local Nazarene churches, and serve in other countries that they're not indigenous to. Missionaries that go and they practice evangelism. They conduct charitable work. They use their talents and their training and their skills to make a difference through their service. And they go and they work to empower local people to do the same thing, because the best people to reach a people in a community are people from that community. But not all communities have access to churches and training and education and all the wonderful things that we have here. So we send missionaries to go do that work. Sometimes we're called to be those missionaries ourselves. Maybe it's for a short term, maybe it's for a long term. But how do they end up going? They're able to go because the church says we'll support this sending call that you have on your life. I tried to find it out pretty specifically, but there's some different estimates. There are billions of people in the world that don't know Jesus Christ. And according to one estimate, there are around 430,000 full-time missionaries. Billions. 430,000 full-time missionaries. 430,000 people trying to love, educate, and meet the needs of billions around the world. 430,000 trying to fulfill the words of Jesus that whatever you do for one of the least of these, you do to me. 430,000 that are trying to leave everything that is comfortable and spread the light of Jesus in the darkest places, to pray for those that they would serve. That's what they're doing. That's the special call that's on their lives. I mean, it is a special calling, because you just don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what you're going to do and where you're going to be and who you're going to encounter. Yeah, have you ever seen the sign, been to a church, and as you're walking out, there's a sign over the door that says, you are now entering the mission field, a mission field, right? Cool sign, and it's just supposed to remind us that, we can share the gospel anywhere and everywhere, next door, across the room, right? We're to be witnesses of Jesus wherever we are. We're called to engage locally with the good news, right? But there's a danger with this sign, because we can end up focusing completely on our own community and neglect global needs. And there's another danger that if we don't focus on if we only focus on global needs, then we can forget about our local community. It's both. It's across the street and around the world. So today, when we're talking about supporting missions around the world, there's some reasons I want to present as to why, as a church, we should be supporting global missions on this Faith Promise Sunday. First reason is financial resources. The United States has the financial resources that other countries do not. We have the financial resources. No matter how much money you have, I guarantee you are richer than the vast majority of the entire planet. I didn't pull up the statistics, but you can read there's stuff out there. Even if you don't have very much money at all, you've still got more money than a lot of places I've been. And, we have those financial resources to send people. So if we can, then we have the responsibility to do. The second reason is that with those resources comes the ability to train and educate and provide transportation and to get people to other locations. Why do we have to send them to other locations? I've already mentioned that, because the people don't have churches and discipleship, and some places don't have internet. Some places there are no Christians, so we have to send Christians there. So we got the finances, we got the ability, the transportation, and so we have the responsibility to do it. Otherwise we're just expecting people to figure out how to find Jesus on their own, right? And so that's why we have a responsibility, because we can do it. So if we can't go with them, we can't do short-term missions, at least we can help by sending someone who is doing the work. Whether you really like it or not, we are more global now than ever. We have more connections around the world than ever before. And with that connections around the world, we are made more aware of global needs than we ever have been before. When else could you pull up a Facebook or Instagram page from somebody in Papua New Guinea, and they'll tell you what the weather is and what they're doing that day? Even if they wrote you know how long it takes to travel to Papua New Guinea? It's like 32 hours of travel or something like that. And that's if everything goes well. But we're connected. And so if we're connected and we have the ability and we have the responsibility, shouldn't we be providing help? Shouldn't we be working to pray? Shouldn't we be working to send more missionaries, because there's so much work to do? Yes, we do it locally, but we can't neglect globally. So this means, at least giving support to missionaries, even if you're not going to be one yourself, and I understand that. Going on short-term mission trips, whatever it is. But I believe we should support missionaries. And Jamie and I have always supported Faith Promise, because honestly, we follow the first missionary for the Christian faith, Jesus. Because God went to him and said, "Hey, son, I'm sending you. I'm sending you on a mission, and we're going to save the world." And that's who we follow. It's in his nature. And he calls us to do the same, to make disciples among the nations. So Faith Promise is one of the primary ways that we raise funds for missionaries. It is a annual thing. We do it once a year, and we make a pledge to faithfully give on a weekly or monthly basis over the next year. Now, your pledge is confidential between you and God and Greta, I guess, the finance team, but nobody else is going to know how much you give or anything. We're not going to report on it, but you do need to know that, it's a promise made in faith. Nobody's going to call you each week and be like, "Hey, don't forget you made this pledge." It's a promise that you're making, and if it's a little bit challenging for you, you're making that promise in faith that God is going to provide. You're going to support his cause and his missionaries. And so you're going to trust that he's going to provide financially. So you make this pledge and you make this commitment, and you shouldn't confuse it with regular tithes and offerings, the 10% tithes or other offerings. Well, I'm giving to Faith Promise, and so I'm not going to support Alabaster. Different things like that. This is a specific pledge that is beyond all of that goes towards missionaries and world evangelism. All right? The promise is based on what you believe God would have you give, and trusting that God would provide. You're really trusting that God is, that this giving pays eternal dividends. This side of heaven, you're not likely to see what difference that money makes. But that's the faith part. I'm promising to give this much throughout the next year in faith that God is going to take it and specifically bless world evangelism efforts. And I know as a church we ask for money on a pretty regular basis. And I get it. And I've sat there before thinking, man, what are they asking for now? But you know why? Because God is entrusting us with a lot. God looks at our church and says, you are faithful. I mean, that's what his scripture says. He said, those who are faithful with a little are entrusted with a lot, right? And so we've got a lot of responsibilities, a lot of things that God is entrusting us with, and most of them take some kind of financing. And I'm happy to support it. We support everything in the church. And that's why we have to do that, because we're impacting the world from little old Ashtabula, right? But God's trying to impact the entire world all the time. So as the praise team comes back up, I told you this wasn't going to be a typical message. I'm not pulling at your heartstrings or anything. I'm just trying to pull your wallets out, right? As the praise team comes back up, I'm asking you, if any of this has matters to you. Maybe you've given to Faith Promise in the past. Maybe you never have before. But it is something that again, you're not going to get any praise from anybody. You're not going to get a thank you from me specifically because I know that how much you pledge. Very few people are going to know, but God's going to know. God's going to know how much it means in your heart to see his mission move forward, to support his missionaries that have a special call to evangelize around the world. So I'm asking, will you pledge to support those who are giving their all, crazy generous? I mean, if you've ever had somebody come up to you and said, hey, I think God's calling me to sell my house and sell my car and everything and become a missionary. Are you crazy? Only kids do that stuff, That's what we're called to support. So I'm going to pray, and then I'm going to explain how you can make this pledge, whether at Geneva or here at Ashtabula or online. I'm going to explain how you can make that pledge. But before we do that, I want to pray, and I'm going to ask you to pray as I do about what God would have you give. All right? Father, thank you for the opportunity to share the stories of how cool you are, how great you are, the things that happen around the world, and that we get to participate in that. I would ask that you would bless each person here with a simple knowledge of what it is you want for them, what it is you want for them to offer and to give, and how generous to be with this Faith Promise pledge. And then I ask that you would encourage them, encourage their hearts, speak to their minds, so that they would make that pledge, so that they would support your efforts around the globe. I pray your Spirit would be at work in all of us. And I ask this in Jesus' name. So in your seat backs, there's a blue card. There's a tear-off portion of it. If you haven't already, you can look, and I've got one right here. You can fill out this card, and there's a part that you can tear off as a reminder to you, so you can put it on your refrigerator or something and say, oh yeah, I got to write that Faith Promise check, or got to pay it online or however. But if you want to fill this out, you're going to tear off. And the big part, I think Bob's got some ushers while we're singing, that if you filled it out, some ushers are going to be standing in the middle. Just hold it up. You can fold it in half so nobody can seize it or whatever, but just hold it up and an usher will come by and collect that. That's here at Ashtabula. And next week we'll announce what the total was. At Geneva, there should be an usher that's preparing to go around that has the cards. If you want to have a pledge card, just raise your hand and they will bring it to you. If you are joining online, all you got to do is go to the homepage at theridgenaz.org, go down to the bottom at the contact form, just put your name, email address, and write down what your pledge is, and submit that form and communicate your pledge. How long have we been given to Faith Promise? 20 years? Probably. Yeah. It's only money. I say it to Jamie all the time. It's only money. And it does nothing if we hold on to it too tight. It hurts us, but it does nothing to help, to bless people. So I encourage you to fill these out, pray, and do as God leads. But let's go ahead and stand. The ushers are going to be collecting those if you need to pass them to the middle or something. But thank you in advance. Let's sing together.
Christ is my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand when everything around me is shaken. I've never been more glad that I put my faith in Jesus, 'cause He's never let me down. He's faithful through generations. So why would He fail now? He won't. He won't. I still got joy in chaos. I've got peace that makes no sense. So I won't be going under. I'm not held by my own strength, 'cause I built my life on Jesus. He's never let me down. He's faithful in every season. So why would He fail now? He won't. He won't. He won't fail. He won't fail. He won't. He won't. He won't fail. He won't fail. Christ is my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand when everything around me is shaken. I've never been more glad that I put my faith in Jesus, 'cause He's never let me down. He's faithful through generations. So why would He fail now? He won't. He won't. He won't fail. He won't fail. Rain came and wind blew, but my house was built on you. I'm safe with you. I'm gonna make it through. Rain came and wind blew, but my house was built on you. the rock on which I stand, when everything around me is shaken. I've never been more glad that I put my faith in Jesus, 'cause He's never let me down. He's faithful through generations. So why would He fail now? He won't. He won't. He won't fail. He won't fail. He won't. He won't. He won't fail. He won't fail.
I think I've kept you long enough for today. If you need to pray about this, it's not just today. You can make a pledge at any point, any time. I will tell you, Greta gave me the numbers from last year. I think we had, I don't know, $15,000, $16,000 that were pledged, but brought in over 18,000 because you gave more than you pledged, which was awesome. And that's the kind of church we are. And so I think we can hit a home run with it again this year. We'll see. But trusting God, He won't fail. He won't fail you. He won't fail the church. He won't fail His creation. He's doing great things. And so at the very least, pray to support His cause, His mission around the world. All right, let me pray a blessing over you, and we can go ahead and dismiss. Father, thank you. I ask that you would lead us and guide us, that we would follow you, go with you wherever you lead, doing as you will, not as we will. Your kingdom come, your will be done. Lead us in the paths of righteousness for your name, for the name of your Son, Jesus. I ask you this day in His name. Amen. Thank you for being here.